So, hello everybody and welcome. It's so nice to see you all here. Fantastic. All these ladies are working for getting the horses a better world. So, welcome today to this debate round. I'm Anna Axel and I'm the host of this what you say? Yeah, debate round. and I have collected these ladies because I know that they are very keen on that the horses is okay, and that is what it's all about. We know we are in a great movement for the moment, and there's a lot of people out there who are uh, criticizing, don't do that, don't do this, and I always said, yeah, come on, let's show them that there is a better way. So these ladies here today are going to present themselves in 5-10 minutes, and they will tell you about what they are going on in their world and how they are helping the horses in their way. So please welcome. Who should I pick first? Solange, do you look so eager to start? So please do that.
Hi, I will. Hi, everybody. My name is Solange, and I am in Ohio in the United States. I have had my horse facility for 24 years now, and I've been teaching mostly riding lessons. I did horse training early, but then I realized that the best way to help horses was by helping their riders. So I've switched over to primarily rider coaching. About 3 years ago, I created the Stable Riding Lab, which is where I'm sitting right now. And it's a dedicated building on my property with tools that riders can train on that help them find stability in their body without the emotional complexity of their horse beneath them. And the tools that they learn in the lab to be stable in their skeleton on the horse's back, then when they get on their horse, they're able to be clearer, more competent communicators for the horses. I find that whenever a rider is physically unstable, it always affects the way that they communicate to their horse emotionally because they're more anxious and they're more fearful because they feel unstable on the horse's back. So when I'm able to take a rider and break down their body position using the 4 factors: alignment, grip, weight distribution, and skeletal alignment, weight distribution, grip, and absorption. With those 4 factors in every riding position, when the riders achieve stability in their own body, they are freer with their hands. And that's what everybody wants. Every horse wants every rider to stop pulling on their mouth because they're nervous. So that's my main goal. And I met Anne through that. And we've been talking now for, I think, over a year now, right, Anne, is when we met. And immediately we just got along. I think that our values really align, and what we want to do in the horse world, helping riders be more confident, is really a nice mission that we're both on together. So I'm very excited to be here today and talk about how we can help horses by helping riders.
Thanks a lot. A nice presentation, short and sweet.
That's how I
but
like it.
but I'm sure we're going to talk more later. So yeah, Marina, will you go on here and tell us who are you?
Good question. Good question. From the accent, I'm from the States, but I've been living in Switzerland now for almost 25 years plus. I even brought my horse over from Montana to Switzerland, and I work as a coach, like a riding coach in a different sense. My focus is, because I'm a coach on personal development work or equine facilitated learning, I try to bring that component into the coaching the rider. I'm not so much about the technical stuff. Other people are better than that. But I'm there to see what happens when you change your thinking. How do you deal with emotions? Because the horses, they respond to the stuff you can't see going on inside of a person. And so I try to, in the work with the rider and the horse, kind of see the horse as a mirror, possibly, you know. So before you correct something on the horse, which people tend to do relatively quickly because they don't know what else to do, I just kind of put a stop sign in between, ask them to take a break, and just ask them what's going on inside, just so they take more time to reflect before they correct the horse. That's kind of putting it short and sweet to bring that aspect in. I come from the horsemanship side, and when I did my education to do this work as a personal development coach with horses, I started looking at horses through other eyes. Because I said, wow, if they can help me do that, and for my own personal development, if I can bring this into the riding and to the equestrian world, then it's just another tool that the rider has to strengthen the relationship and understanding between people and horses. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, thank you. And Marina and I is also working together in we are calling Happy Horse Hub. We think it's so fantastic name, our club.
I think
Happy
we're
Horse
partners
Hub.
in crime on that one, right? Yeah, cool.
So, Margaret, please tell us who you are and what you're doing.
So my name is Margaret Parsons, and I am in a small town in Michigan, United States. And I actually do the other side. I'm working with the horses primarily and their physical bodies, which is a lot more than just their physical body. It's also tapping into what's going on with them emotionally. Because just like with people, the physicality is only part of it, right? Like our emotions definitely directly impact how our posture is and how we think and the decisions we make. And it is the same for the horses. And so I also kind of bridge the gap between the horse and the rider, because the rider comes to me a lot of the time like, yes, I do have clients that are like, I just want them to feel good. And I'm like, okay, cool, we can do that. But most of the time, I have people coming to me, they're like, I don't know what's wrong with this horse. You know, here's the problem. We can't get a canter lead. They're bolting, they're bucking, they're just cranky, and I don't understand it. So I get to come in and kind of say, hey, this is why. This is what's going on in the body. And even more often, what's really interesting is like hearing Solange and Marina talk. I'm like, yeah, guys, like I see this in the horse's body. I see what's going on with the rider in the horse's body. And then I say to the rider, like, this is what I see in your horse's body. And a lot of times I don't get to just jump in and be like, and this is happening in your body too, or this is a mirror of your emotional state. But like when my clients come in and they're dumping a bunch of emotional stuff on me, and then they're wondering why their horse is carrying an emotional baggage, I'm like, we'll get there. We're going to talk about this slowly over time, you know, and I get to kind of do the same thing you guys are doing on that level, because I do also talk to people about their emotions and regulating and how that impacts the horse. So I also, in addition to doing physical massage and rehab with horses, I also work with energy work. I do a modality called the emotion code. So that kind of helps people and horses both clear out some trapped emotions, some energetic stuff that's just weighing them down. And for now, I'm kind of doing all of that through a program because I'm one person. And like realistically, I have a bigger goal than impacting the 50 clients that I can manage at a time. You know, like I can't take on more people than that. So I've created a certification program where I train other people to do the body work and the emotional work and the energy work with horses and people to like make the impact, because that's what it's about. It's about rippling out and helping as many horses as possible. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But the bigger goal is for me, I'm looking at kill pens and finding a way to kind of cut them down. Because I recognize that it's an industry and it makes money. So just outlawing it isn't going to solve the problem. You know, plus we have all these extra horses. So I'm working through a program to kind of switch kill pen horses into horses that are helping people in ways that people are already using them energetically and emotionally as therapy horses. So I brought in my first rescue horse last fall, who coincidentally, the reason I brought him in is because when I saw him in a kill pen, I realized that I worked with him 10 years ago. And so I was like, this is a solution that we're going to start right here, right now. So that's what's going on in my little corner of the world. Hopefully it will ripple out and become a bigger impact over time, because I'm here for the horses. So.
Yeah, that's great. As you said, there's so much to do with the horses, and I think we are going to discuss that also a little bit later when everybody have introduced themselves with the industry of horses and all that. So please, Kate.
Yeah, I go by both, Kate and Katie. My name is Kate Neligan. I am currently outside of Boulder, Colorado in the United States, and in the near future, California. I essentially bridge kind of two worlds that we've already talked about. So one is the human-centered space of equine partnered life and business coaching. So I help people, most of them are not actually equestrians, but a lot of them are horse lovers, to really develop emotional intelligence and life skills, leadership skills, all through partnering with horses. And I also work with goats. And then I also work on the horse side, doing animal communication and healing modalities, most of which my mare taught me before she passed. I also do emotion code and absolutely love it. I find it to be really helpful for all of the animals. So mostly in that space, working really on the human-animal bond. So people and their horses, but also other animals as well. And then I also created a certification program called Awakening with Equines to essentially teach people the three main skill sets that I think are important in the personal development world with horses, which is my master's is in spiritual psychology. So I bring that in. I bring in animal communication and healing, and then also marketing and business development, since that's also my background. So, and thanks for having me. I was on your podcast, I think it was last year at this point, but always happy to be here and being a voice for especially the horses, because they need us, and it's important for us to be talking about different ways we can support their welfare. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And Pamela, you are up next as the last one.
I'm Pamela Maynard. I am in rural North Dakota, and most people are like, is that where Mount Rushmore is? I'm like, no, that's South Dakota. I'm closer to Canada, and then everybody knows where Canada is. And I have an equine wisdom and wellness coaching business, and I do everything remotely, so it doesn't matter if you know where I'm at. But at any rate, I used to train. I've been doing horses in many facets in the professional horse industry since I was 15. And I always wanted to be a horse trainer. And I have a huge background in the Arabian horse world and transitioned into the quarter horses and paints. And I just got really tired of seeing 4-year-olds getting their hocks injected and being beauted up to go to a horse show. And I, even though I was, probably a little young and naive, I just knew in my heart of hearts, I'm like, this is not right. And I transitioned into a different area of the horse industry and still always had horses of my own. I was working for a horse newspaper, and decided to go to college. And I love how these horses show up in our lives for teachers. Like Margaret was saying how, this horse in the kill pen, she just happened to work with 10 years ago. There's no coincidence. So I end up with these horses that take me on this journey so that I become certified in body work and different modalities to help them. But I end up having a lot of people come to me where they say, I've tried everything. Right. And they're mostly addressing the physical issues and jumping from trainer to trainer to trainer. And the reality is their horse just doesn't feel good. Right. And I'll never forget years ago, you guys remember when Oprah Winfrey still had her original talk show? She did an episode on abuse. And I remember her coming out and saying something that has just stuck with me all these years, is she says, abuse doesn't always come in blood and bruises. And I see that so much with the horses. And I feel like people, when they think of abuse, they think of, you know, the harsh training tactics and the tie downs and the tight cavesons and, you know, bloody mouths and, you know, spur marks or whatever. But I see it from a whole different level. When I start somebody in my 6-month coaching program, I always start by doing what I call a PEC assessment. And 9 times out of 10, when we look at their primary health concern, it's not physical. It's usually emotional or chemical. So I look at this welfare issues, you know, so much deeper than what people often think of on the surface. And I'm glad we're having, you know, this conversation around it. And, you know, I feel like this really got really profound for me, and the universe was guiding me to really go into more of the healing aspect with horses when my soulmate horse was sprayed by agriculture chemicals many years ago. And you know, the vets told me to put her down, and you know, everything in her eyes told me that she was not ready to leave the planet. And the beautiful thing about these horses is they take us on our own journeys, right? And people aren't prepared for that. And I've had to learn over the years to let it be organic and let the horses really, you know, lead and facilitate the way. And I feel like the more we can educate people, because a lot of people don't understand that we can do emotion code and EFT and help them on emotional level. And so I find that, like, I do a lot of educating, but it's like Margaret also said, I can't save them all. So we have to have this ripple effect and share. And so that's the beautiful thing about this debate panel. Super excited to be a part of this. I could go on and on. As you can see, I'm very passionate about being a voice for the voiceless and helping these animals. And it starts by educating the people. So thank you for organizing this today, Anne.
Thank you so much. Oh, oh, it's so fantastic. Because this is what you're saying. We are going to be together and work on this path together and get it out to a lot of people. And I think it's the right time right now. There is a lot going on with the horses. It had been a long time with the what you call it, abuses or military things and spurs and whips and all these things. And now it seems like people are starting to open up their eyes. What I was most getting in my time with horses, when I had some people who should teach me to ride and all that, it was a lot of military, and you know how it is. It's hard, and the horses should just do what they were told and all that. But now I will see it from a whole different perspective. And the more people I interview in my podcast, the more I learn and the more fascinated I am by what you really can do for the horses. So I wanted to ask here, there's a couple of guests. Do you have any questions for these beautiful ladies? If there's someone have a question, you can click the microphone and you can ask, or you can also write in the chat if there's something you want to ask about. And if there's no questions, I would like to start here to ask questions, because what can we do? What can we do? Margaret was talking about she wanted to educate a lot of people, and I think that is what we all would like to do. How can we do this? How can we educate them out there and reach more people? And I will ask Margaret. You were talking about it. So
Well, there's lots of different ways, right? There's lots of different ways that we can do that. Primarily, I focus on word of mouth with my clients and growing social media presence and getting myself out there to do big events. So we have a horse expo in Michigan. You betcha. I signed up to be a presenter at that and went and spoke. It was a 3-day event. So I had 3 different presentations. And a whole bunch of people came and asked questions, and that's the start of it. Like, because the truth of the matter is, a lot of like, I didn't get a bunch of business from that expo. That wasn't the point, right? Like, I mean, it would have been great, but people come from all over for that expo. There were hundreds of people that I talked to that asked me questions that all walked away with a little bit of something. So it's, to me, it's not necessarily about, I mean, like I said, we could go on a whole marketing conversation and like, there's things that you can do to grow your followers and get more attention and all the things, like, sure. But it's really about the one person that's in front of you in the moment and planting a seed, regardless of whether they're going to come back to me later or they're going to find somebody else, or I just send them down a rabbit hole on TikTok. Like, I don't care. Like, we need to start a conversation. And so that's my premise. And I try to use my social media the same way. Like, again, I don't care if you come back to me. I want to make you think. I want to plant a seed that's going to have you going, wait a minute. What did you just say to me? Right? That's what it's about to me, is we start with the seed and we let that grow regardless of who they come back to or who they pursue later. Like, I just want to start you thinking.
So we who started this, we are going to get out of our comfort zones a lot. I have seen that as well. That and maybe many people think that I'm not educated in this. I'm not so high in this, so I can't say anything. But I think that there is a change in that.
Yeah, so like that's something I impress upon people too. So remember, I educate people that take my courses, and when I do that, I have to remind them all the time. Like, everybody has imposter syndrome, and there's never going to be a day that you wake up that you don't have like a smidgen of doubt in the back of your mind. Like, even the Olympians out there have a day where they're like, I don't know if I can ride this course today, or that was a crap ride, or I'm not sure. Like, a veterinarian is going to be like, oh gosh, this is a hard case. Like, it doesn't matter how many years you've been working at it, there's going to be doubt. And furthermore, there's always somebody that knows less than you.
Yeah.
So if you're sharing just a tiny bit of information, again, like, you don't have to explain everything to everybody. Just plant the seed. So if you know just a smidgen more than somebody else, like if you see somebody that's out there struggling, I mean, isn't that the kind of world we want to live in anyways, right? You see somebody out there struggling and they're like, horrible, like, it's their first horse show and they've totally got their girth on backwards and they aren't wearing their shirt right. And you just walk up and you say, hey man, can I help you out? Is this your first time?
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same thing when we're approaching anything in the horse world. Like, that's the kind of community in the horse world that we all want to be a part of. We all want to be a part of something where we don't worry about being judged, but instead we know these people here have my back and they're not going to let me hurt my horse on accident. They're not going to let me wear my shirt backwards or put my girth on upside down, right? You know, so like, yeah, it doesn't matter how much you know, you always know a little bit more at least than someone else. And you don't have to explain the whole concept. You can just simply say, hey, you know, I saw this lady and she was talking about this and it seems like it might help you. That little kernel of information could change that person and that horse's life. Just that, because then their owner, their rider can go down the rabbit hole themselves and find the right people. Because I also believe in fate and people coming into your life at the right time. That one little statement can send you to the next step, right? It's always about taking that one next step.
Yeah, thank you. Somebody else wants to say something in this matter.
I believe it's just about living by example. You know, like so many people are like, why is your horse so dappley? Why does your 24-year-old look like she's only 10? And, you know, like, it just living by example, and people will start to ask questions right? And then it's because it's not for us to convince, right? Everybody's on their own path, their own journey around this. And if they're not open to it, they're not going to listen anyways. So I find just by leading by example, it will we'll have people ask questions, and then that gives you an opportunity to share.
That's right. That's right. And we have seen some on Facebook, I think, that people show that you don't have to have a double bridle, you don't have to have all these things. You can ride without it, but it is not only the riding. There's so much more to it.
I think too, in our business, there's a large culture of ego with instructor and trainers. And coming from what you said, Anne, earlier about it being a very military, cavalry, male, power structure based system, that oftentimes people are unwilling to speak truth to power or question things. And oftentimes I have riders who have been riding with an incorrect body position or tack that doesn't work for them, or a large understanding gap in their education for years because they felt the shame and burden of ignorance on themselves. Instead of looking at their instructor and going, I've been coming to you for 6 years and I'm still not sure my stirrups are right. I've been jumping for 5 years and I'm not sure exactly where I'm supposed to pick my butt up. Right? Am I kicking right? Because I'm moving my leg, but I don't think my horse is listening. And the students don't feel comfortable asking that. And the instructors, I think, encourage that because they want to be the horse trainer. Right? And they just want everyone to do as they say and not question or ask questions. And I look at my riders over and over again that I've been getting more recently with the creation of my stable riding system in the lab. It tends to be a lot of riders who've been riding decades, women in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, and early 60s who started riding when they were little. Like a lot of us started riding it. I was on a horse before I could walk. I don't remember learning to canter. I was 5. I grew up with horses. And they have had over the course of their instruction multiple trainers, multiple instructors. They've read a bunch of books. They've been in a bunch of classes. They've audited a bunch of clinics, and they have this overflow of information, and they don't know how to ask the important questions to figure out what works for you and what works for your horse and what doesn't. And when these riders labor for years and decades riding with these gaps in their education, they think it's them. They go, I'm too old. I'm not strong enough. I'm not fit enough. I'm not built to ride. I'm not talented. I'm not a natural. And I look at my riders and I go, if you have a skeleton, if you have bones, you can be stable on your horse. And everybody I talk to who has bones, right? Everybody I know has bones. But what makes me sad is that the riders who have had bad instruction, poor instruction, judgy instruction, judge from the community, right? Because it's a very pressured judge community, especially with Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and the glamour reels, is that they get gaslit into thinking that they can't. And when they don't feel empowered to make a change in their own body, when they don't feel to make a change in their own communication or their own equipment or their own emotional state, they're not going to be able to do it for their horse because they can't even do it for themselves. So I look at riders over and over again and I go, it's not you, it's your instruction. Right? But they have to be empowered to look at the instructor and go, I don't think this is working for me. Or look at the horse trainer and go, I don't think this is working for my horse. Or look at the feed rep and go, I don't think this is the right feed. Or look at a blacksmith and go, I don't think these are the right shoes. This isn't working. Right? If you can't advocate for yourself, then it's hard to advocate for someone else.
Mm.
That's
So that's
Well, I really recognize that. I'm built in the wrong way. My father always said, if you're going to ride, you're going to look like a cowboy. Your legs is going like this, but my legs is the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Marina, would you say you were starting?
I was going to say something there. I lost my I did lose my train of thought, but in alignment with what everybody else is saying, I think we can role model it and inspire people to go to new places with their horses. And a lot of times I just have them also work with my own horse, because sometimes you may be stuck with your own horse. And then if I can take them out of their environment and they get a feel for what it feels like when you can ride a horse with lightness, with your thoughts, with very little inputs, I try to anchor that feeling by allowing them to work with my horses on the ground or in the saddle, so they can then say, because if you don't know what you're looking for, or you read about it in a book, you read about harmony and lightness, but if you've never felt it before in your body, or if you haven't felt it, what a horse is like when you can just breathe out and it'll do a downward transition. And that's ways of not saying one is right or wrong, just saying feel it, and then you can make a choice about how, and then take that back to your own horse. And that's one way I try to help people just become more aware, so that they can make new choices in the future. That's the goal.
Yeah, riding is feeling, and yeah. Katie, do you have something to say here?
I mean, I would echo a lot of what's already been said. I do believe I set an intention to speak as often as I can as a form of education. So speaking, being public about what we want to share, whether it is, we have so many platforms now for media and for speaking, and media is a great way to educate. In addition, I 100% believe that in our sharing, it's really being a role model, like being the change we want to see. People reach out to me often because they're like, you look like you have a good connection with your horses. What are you doing? And I recently talked to a woman who she hired someone just because she wanted to learn liberty, and she hired that person just because she goes, her horses look like they're having fun. Like, that's why I wanted to work with her. And I'm like, good for you, right? Like, it's the lead by being the example. And then I think the third is just, there's a lot of humility that has to happen in being an educator and being educated, because there's a lot of points of views and opinions, especially in the horse world. And so there's just an opportunity to surrender judgment long enough to learn. I really believe we can learn from absolutely anyone, even if we're learning how not to do something. But we ultimately, I think what we need to all really consider is just that we have to surrender our ego and our points of views to be willing to see other ways of doing things. And I mean, I used to be an atheist, and I was very in one path, and until I started to really open up and understand there's a lot of other things going on in the world, I was stuck in one way. And now I look at it and I'm like, wow, there's so many different things that we can be doing to help the horse, and we can all learn from each other if we're willing to listen. So it's about listening.
Yeah, and a lot of times I hear this from people. I have people who come to me when they are afraid of riding, and that can come certainly. And one thing they say, that if they have their horse in another stable, that people come and say, why don't you ride your horse? It's like you can't have a horse and not ride it. It's all the things here. But I had many horses I didn't ride. I kept my ponies from my children and things like that. Why can't you have a horse and not ride it? Anybody wants to answer this question?
I always tell my students that to be a good horse owner, you only have to be physically and financially responsible for them. And if that's a lot of riding or no riding or a little riding, the horse doesn't care.
That's
They
right.
just want to be healthy and happy and safe. That's all they want.
Mm.
I actually got this a lot when I first got so I have a retired standardbred, and again, he's one to teach me something. I had contact with him many moons ago, and then had an opportunity to bring him home. And so when I brought him home, I knew what his life had been like for 12 and a half years. He was a racehorse. He had a job. He worked 6 days a week. He raced once a week. He was very lucky in because when we had him, and then the home that we sold him to, they did believe in turnout, so he was lucky. They also fed him really well. He didn't get fed garbage, but he had a good life. But it was a very, as we're saying, like, militant life. It's very scheduled. You don't have a choice. This is what you're doing today. And he loved his job. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to do it as long as he did it, right? He was successful. He made money. I brought him home and I said, you will do nothing for at least a year. I will come out and I will spend time with you, but you're going to learn what it's like to make your own choices. And the amount of pushback that I got when I would share that I have this perfectly healthy horse who's 14 years old and could totally be ridden. People are like, why aren't you riding? Are you scared? I'm like, no, I love him and I just want him to be happy. And I want him to know what it's like to make a choice, to choose. And so that's how we've moved forward. I do everything pretty much with him at Liberty. We saddle at Liberty. I haven't ridden him a whole bunch of times, but that's because I don't need to. Like, we play, we just have a good time. And when we do ride, we go on adventures and he leads the way. I don't care. As long as we stay out of the neighbor's yard. He does try and convince me that we need to go into the neighbor's yard and see what they have going on. And we just try and stay to the road. But yeah, I mean, I've had that pushback and I try and explain that to people, and some people just aren't going to get it. Some people aren't where we're at. And so that's my leading by example. It's like, no, do you know that you can actually let your horse make a choice? It's a really cool thing. And it's so fun because they start to respect you and play with you more and want to spend more time with you because you are allowing them choice. So that's been my experience with it. I just actually, by example, I don't argue with people on that one. I don't think I can convince anybody that horses aren't machines right out the gate, right? That's my seed planting. I'm like, I can do it. You can do it too.
That's right. That's right.
I feel like we're having a bit of a transition now that, Liberty's becoming more popular, relationship-based horsemanship's becoming more popular. So we are having some doors open, but yes, we still have a lot of people that are living in the status quo. And it's like, I have 4 horses of my own, and I do something different with each one of them based on their history, their training, their emotional state, and people are just stuck in their little box. And I got my first quarter horse here a couple years ago as a weanling, and I had the breeder on my back when he was a long yearling. Are you riding him yet? I'm like, nope, not riding my yearling. Thank you. 2-year-old. Are you riding him yet? Nope. He's like 4 inches butt high and can't hold his hind lead. Not riding him yet, and he has been handled. He's had several things done. He's been hauled across country. He's experienced things. And just now, as a 4-year-old, I feel like he's starting to be a little more mentally mature to even handle it. And I have to hide in my backyard because I'm not walk, trot, cantering and showing my 4-year-old yet. And I feel that. I feel there's still that pressure from, because I have a lot of people that are in my circle that show, and there's 2 ways to look at this. If you want to show and you're doing high end, dressage or whatever, these horses have to be ridden so that they are in the physical shape to do the maneuvers, to do a reining pattern, even a pleasure class. You go to a national horse show and, I've had a lot of people where they train at home and they just they train for their local A shows. And then you go to nationals and you got 50 horses in the class and they have to lope for 10 minutes and the horses aren't in physical shape to even, get through a walk, trot, canter pleasure class. So there's that part, and it's all about creating balance. And I feel like people don't always understand that. I feel like in the horse industry, there's so many extremes, I love my Arabians and the quarter horse people. You need to get yourself a real horse, and then I tried doing dressage and I was like, this doesn't feel good because everything's extreme. It's our way or the highway. And it's not like we can't have balance. It's like, I can't have a quarter horse and an Arab and a Cel Francais in my backyard and do Liberty and English and Western and trail riding. It's like everybody's so, narrow focused. And I think it's just like I said, doors are opening and that's great. But yes, people get caught up in this, I have to ride, I have to do this, because I think that the show world puts a lot of pressure on that. I don't show anymore for that reason. And don't get me wrong, I watch the World Cup. I enjoy seeing these horses, and I loved seeing the Swedish team win, you know, on barefoot horses. And I love that people are doing stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm not gonna do that to my horse to go on the show ring right now. Like, and it's really hard to say, oh, I'm just gonna do it to have fun, right? When you have a lot of external pressure. I hear it from a lot of my clients. I recently supported a client moving barns because she was getting so much pressure just from the other women in the boarding facility that she was at. Because, well, when are you going to show, when are you going to do this, when you know, and so then she starts to feel guilty, right? Like I tell my clients, like, we have to be proactive with them, yes, and we also have to be patient, and we have to be persistent. But at the end of the day, it's about what's for the highest good for you and the horse. And this particular client I'm talking about finally, after was moved out of the dressage barn, got to a barn where people just trail ride and do all kinds of different things. She's now okay to be like, I'm just going to go out and meditate with my horse today, and nobody chastises me for it. And so the environment is a huge piece of it. And it shouldn't be about making one thing right or wrong, although I see a lot of wrongs, you know, in something, you know, like I see a lot of dressage horses getting put down, you know, before the age of 10 because they're broken, and they have to put them down to collect the insurance money. And a week later, they got a new one coming in, you know, from Europe. Like, in my opinion, I think that's wrong. But, you know, for those who want to do that, there's a place for them, and they should not be pressuring other people. It's like people need to learn to take just responsibility for themselves and their own horses and not put that pressure, but they do it. I see it all the time. I get it myself. You know, fortunately, I have my little backyard I can hide out in. I don't share a lot of my stuff on social media for that reason. I'm like, I know how people are. I don't need people putting their energy on my journey with my horse because I'm not, you know, showing my 4-year-old. And, you know, we just have to learn to stand in our truth about it, really, is how I look at it. I know I'm on a tangent. I get really passionate about this because there's so many extremes, there's so many different areas, you know?
Yeah, and I think also what Marina and I have been discussing is there is a gap out there, uh, a gap to understand the horse, to read the horse. I have a customer, and she is going on a school with horses, and we were talking about reading a horse. Uh, what is the horse feeling? And she had never heard of that. Uh, that I told her about the eyes and the blinking eyes and ears and everything. No, they have never talked about that in school. And when you have a horse, when you get a horse and you are told that you should just ride it, you have this gap from being a friend to just be a toy you can use for things. So I think also that we have to get it out in the world and say, treat it like as a friend, not a horse.
Yeah, like they're not tools, they're sentient beings. And I believe a lot of people don't understand the difference. When I was doing my master's thesis research, one of the questions I asked, because I was evaluating equine assisted therapy and psychotherapy programs, and one of the questions I asked was, do you consider the horse, you know, a sentient being, or do you use them as a tool? And I, you know, one lady, like, they all want them to be sentient beings, but when she had to stop and think about it, she asked me to shut the recorder off because she knew she knew they were just being used as tools to help the clients, right? Like, you know, I was really passionate about wanting to get involved in the equine assisted world because I know the healing power of horses. We know that. And I did this whole master's thesis case study, and it turned out to be an animal welfare paper. Because what I observed horses that had bone dry 100-gallon water tanks tipped over. I observed horses with chronic diarrhea, right? And when I brought it up to the manager, I was fired, from my volunteer position, and I had a volunteer say, "Oh, you think the diarrhea on the tail is bad now? You should have seen it last winter. It was frozen all over to the horse's tail." And I'm like, okay, so this horse has had diarrhea for 10 months and we haven't addressed it. So my paper turned out to be an animal welfare paper, and I had no intention of that happening. And that's the joys of research. You just never know what you're going to get. But it's, people have these good intentions, but at the end of the day, they don't really know, like you said, Anne, they don't know how to read the horse. That, oh, diarrhea, it's just a physical thing. We'll just, treat the diarrhea. And they're not understanding that maybe this horse is stressed out and doesn't love his job. And it's not saying that all animal assisted therapy programs are bad. It's like, but we have to learn to read the horses. And, like people, say that racing is bad. And like Margaret said, her horse loved to race, right? But so we have to learn to read and understand these animals for their individual jobs, what their tolerance levels are, what they're capable of. It's like, I see it a lot in the dressage. It's like, you go to these dressage shows and they're not breed shows, and anybody can show, and they're trying to make this, little grade horse do piaffe and passage. It's like, but he can't do that. That doesn't mean he can't do a training level or this, that, or the other, but we have to learn to read and understand each individual horse. Like, and people always ask, what's your process? I just want to know what you do. And I'm like, everything I do is individual and customized to every single horse and animal, and to the owners. Not all owners are capable of doing stuff. I have people that have horses in their backyards and they can do stuff with their horse every single day. I have people who board their horses and have to drive an hour and they only see the horse on the weekends. Everything is so individualized. And I feel that people try to put everything in a one size fits all box. This is how you do it. Boom. Oh, your horse is off. Oh, you got to inject him. Oh, you need to slap draw reins on. They just have this, like, I call it like highway vision, tunnel vision of how we do stuff. And they're not seeing like, oh, we have emotions over here and feelings, and the horses have a spiritual side, right? It's so much more comprehensive and deeper.
And coming back to what you said about animals being used and horses being used as tools and not partners, that really stems from our validation culture. So we are, as riders, trained that our worth comes from external validation. My horse won this, I have this ribbon, I moved up this level, I'm high point champion. So we base our self-worth on external validation. And with that, the horse becomes a tool for our external validation. And other living things, regardless of whether they're a dog or a horse or a spouse or a child, those living creatures do not exist to externally validate ourselves. So riders who lack self-worth and who don't understand that they should prize comprehension and accomplishment over external validation fall into the continual trap of using this horse as a tool for their external validation. And I've looked at riders and I said, this horse does not exist to make you feel strong, make you feel young, make you feel better, make you feel fast. This horse exists to be a horse. And you can interact with it as much as you want, but he's not here to make you feel better. If anything, you're here to make him feel better because you're his keeper, right? But this validation culture is really prevalent in competition, and it's also very prevalent in a lot of our standardized education systems, where it's not, do you understand it? It's, did you get an A on the test? Show your work, but it has to be done the way we asked. You can get the right math answer, but if it's written down differently than the system we told you, you fail. And you're like, but I got the right answer. And they're like, yeah, but you didn't do it the way I asked you to do it. So a huge part of this problem of using horses as tools for competition and external validation, not using horses as tools like, can you please plow this field for me? More in terms of, can this grade pony please let me get this, second level ribbon in dressage, is reframing our idea of success within ourselves when it comes to education. And that competence and comprehension and understanding and achievement in our own body with our riding means more than I hauled my horse to a place, my horse put its head down because it had a big bit, and I rode it in draw reins, and it's nice and tired because I tied its head up, or I tied its head to the side, right? Or I rode it for a really long time, so now it's tired and it wants to put its head down. And a man that I don't even know in a cowboy hat said, I did a good job riding my horse, and here's my 15-cent ribbon, right? I have just another man who didn't break or train or ride my horse's opinion of my riding. I'm not going to pay for it. I don't want it. I certainly don't want it enough to be paid for it. But that's what we're trained to do.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trained to do often as women and as young women. Can you act and look and appear the way I want? Because I'm going to judge you for it in public. And if you do it really well, you'll get a good girl sticker.
That was a hard one.
Right?
Yeah.
Very well said, though, right? Like
Yeah.
how we treat our horses is how we were raised almost in a sense,
Yeah. Boy, I hope that man in that hat thinks I look pretty in public with my horse and he gives me the ribbon in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I also don't show, if you can't tell.
Yeah, when I did used to show, I'd have clients, be all upset. Oh, my horse was perfect. Why didn't I get, at least the top 3 or this, that, or the other? And I'm like, sweetie, you are just paying for that man's opinion on this particular day and what they saw. And people who are judged, because I haven't done a lot of high level judging, but I used to judge 4-H and some local shows. And when you got 20 horses in the arena, you can't see everything.
Well, and maybe he had a gray growing up that he loved, and your gray reminds him of his beloved horse. Or maybe he had a paint growing up who he hated, and your horse reminds him of that paint.
Right. And they don't even know that's how they're judging. It's all subconscious for them on some level, I'm sure.
All that heuristic.
So many variables involved. But you're right. It's an egocentric industry and we're just like concentrating on blue ribbons and accolades.
Yes. And there's very much the archetype of like the male horse trainer, polo player, golf coach, tennis coach, where it's like they're like rock stars. And I'm like, have you all ever been a horse trainer? Because it's a filthy, repetitive, boring process. Like it is not like, have you ever just said the same thing over and over again every day, regardless of the temperature? It's not that glamorous, but it's viewed socially as being a higher power standing position. And often horse trainers are viewed above riding lesson instructors.
Yeah.
Many years ago, there's a magazine here in the US, and it was Practical Horseman, which is like the English like monthly magazine. Dressage had their own and Western had their own, and Practical Horseman was like hunt seat and eventing and stuff. And the cover of Practical Horseman said, 10 jobs to have in horses that don't involve cleaning stalls or teaching lessons. And I remember just looking at it and going, so you want to work with horses, but you don't want to take care of the horses or teach anybody how to take care of the horses. They're like, can I have the horse part without all that difficult horsing? Can we just take that out? But really, horse trainers are seen as being the stars and the high level, and riding instructors are just the girl who stands in the arena and teach up downer little kids all day. And if the riding instructors were better, we would have less need for horse trainers. The horse trainers who you go to when you're like, well, I can't ride my horse. I need a horse trainer. So we're prizing and paying for the response to the problem, as opposed to prizing and paying for, let's prevent that from occurring as much as possible.
That's a really good point.
It's offsetting responsibility on the horse. My horse needs training. I don't need lessons. My horse needs training.
Well, and you bring up another gap that's in the industry where people can identify symptom versus cause.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like You're sending your horse to the horse trainer because you can't ride it. But
Right.
just because they're misbehaving in some way or another, that means that you can't ride it. One, doesn't mean that a better, more experienced rider couldn't handle it. Or two,
Well, and it's the
there's
diagnostic work.
right. That's where I'm headed next is two, like, is there another problem here that you aren't reading in the horse? Right.
And
So
that
it's that,
diagnostic work requires a very logical, clear, almost scientific method. And the horse world is
100%.
fraught with emotion.
We're going to throw
Emotion,
everything at the horse right
emotion.
now. We're going
Yes.
to throw it all at them because I'm
So
stressed
much
out and
emotion.
yeah, there's a problem here and I don't know what it is. So I'm going to change 6 different things and hope that one of them works. And if it works, I'm not going to know which one
it is.
Right. 100%. And people do it all the time. And that's like one of the things that I enjoy. It's funny, I enjoy it, but I am also a worrywart horse mom at times, right? Like I've got 3 horses outside that I will overanalyze and be like, are you getting the nutrients? Are you getting the water? Are you getting the things? Should we do this? I get that way, but knowing how that feels makes it easier for me to come alongside someone and say, hey, well, let's pump the brakes. You've had 3 different farriers look at this. You've had 6 different veterinarians. You've been to the university. Let's go through all this information and let's sift through it all at once. And let's also talk about what changes have happened in your horse's life for their lifestyle and their emotional state. Have they lost a friend recently? Nobody wants to talk about loss in a horse's life. Moving them across the state to a different barn or across the country, and people are just like, I don't know, I got on him and he wouldn't cooperate. And I'm like, did you realize that he just showed up somewhere new and doesn't know what's going on?
I always say it's an alien abduction. Like you're
Yeah.
living in your house and then a strange person comes and they put you in this loud metal thing that makes a lot of noise. And then you end up in a new place. It's really,
That's 100% it.
It's like an alien. And I'm like, give them a minute.
Right.
Like,
And
it's a whole new
that's
world.
just it. It's like, it's people just learning to read their horses, as we've said, read their horses. Because if you can read your horse, you're going to be more likely to catch up on the symptoms. But just because you identify problems, those are symptoms. That's not necessarily the cause. Granted, you go outside and your horse has got a gash. Okay.
Right.
That's a cause. We need to solve that.
And
But
earlier, I think Marina said that she says she puts up that stop sign and that's that impulse to action. I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm concerned, I'm worried right now. Let me do this thing. As opposed to going, my emotional state does not impact on this right now. Let me have that space and think about this logically. And that's what I love about the space I created, because I have riders and saddles, but they're not on horses and they're not on their horses. And this building on my property is enclosed from the arena, because oftentimes when we're riding or working with our horse, it's almost always a public space because not everybody has their horses in their backyard. And when you're in that public space, you're being judged and you're worried that you have to perform. What's everybody else going to say? What are the other horses going to do? So an unintended positive consequence of teaching riders in this secure area where I can close the door is they get to ride and feel and process without the social complexity going around them, because that makes them more emotional, and then that affects. And then we just start a whole trickle down effect of issues that stem from that. And I didn't realize when I did it, I just did it because this was the building I had, but it ended up being really nice because I can sort of isolate them from a busy arena.
And I think that that's probably an impact that Kate and Pamela, and I know I have, because we work with people on a one-to-one. So we kind of have this, I mean, I know I also work with people in a group, you guys might do that too, but I'm just saying, like, we have this kind of closed door thing where it's like, when I work with somebody, I can quietly behind the scenes support them to being a better advocate for themselves and for their horse, because nobody's there judging what's going on. And they can be open with me and say, this is how I feel at my barn. And I'm like, well, then why are you still here? And it's like, I just gave them the permission to go, wait a minute. Yeah. Why am I still here? Like, I pay to be here.
We end up being the hairdresser and the bartender.
Yeah,
it's a very
100%.
emotional interaction. We see them regularly for years. We could be standing behind their mother-in-law or their boss or their husband in the bank and not know because we've never met them. I had a lady come in and I held her horse's bridle in one hand and I held tissues in the other, and she cried for 45 minutes about her mother-in-law. And at the end, she's like, this was a terrible waste of a riding lesson. I'm like, I think this is the best riding lesson you've had in a while.
100%. 100%.
Like, the horse's name was Jello. I'm like, Jello didn't mind, and now you're gonna go home and feel better. I'm like, go wash your face off, honey.
Right, 100%. It's about supporting the people, right? By supporting the people, we get to support the horses too. So that's awesome.
Yes.
And I
We
think
have a comment in the chat here. Heather is saying, this is where I, as an equine behavior professional, really struggle to get people on board with their role in their horses' lives and truly learning what horse need versus what we traditionally done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think I would respond to that, because I've noticed that people seem to be, we're on a click culture, you know, you get everything instantly.
Mhm.
And I think the lifestyle that we're in, and I see a lot of people are so pressured that when they come to the barn, the last thing they need to worry about, they just want to get on a horse and do whatever they do, but they're really not aware of what they're doing and how their mental state, they don't even know how it's affecting their own life, so let alone affecting the horse's life. And that's why I think a lot of the work that we do, we have privy to the people's lives, because then they can begin to become more aware of what's going on in their own life. And I just spend a lot of time just trying to get them in the present moment, just trying to let go of all that other stuff out there and just be present with your horse. We're not even doing anything yet, because you have to let go of your bad day. You have to let go of your mother-in-law, of all that good stuff that's happened, and just be present in your body. And that's when you can start connecting with how you really feel, how you feel before we even do anything with the horse. And so spend a lot of time on things like that, so they have a certain awareness about how they're doing before, because otherwise they're not in my opinion, in a frame of mind that they can even notice what's going on with the horse. They just see the horse. I mean, they see the horse as a way to relax after a long day of work. So they're just happy to get on. And, you know, if they move around a bit because they're brushed, they don't realize it's because you're stressed and you're just brushing a horse like that. They go, what's wrong with the horse? Yeah, there's that part of it too. So a lot of times I just try to get them to slow down and connect with themselves again first, before they make an attempt to connect with the horse. Because a lot of people aren't connected with themselves. They have no idea what's going on inside them. They don't sense. They say fine, and the horse is giving me a totally different answer. And so
Communication is hard.
I don't know if that helps, Heather, but that would be a starting point.
And being really honest about communication is hard. I say we have difficulty communicating with our children and our spouses and our family members and our coworkers who are humans who share the same vocal language that we do. And these are the people in our lives we should communicate with the best because we're around them the most. But often we have the most difficulty communicating to those closest to us. So then you ask someone to be on a horse's back or near a horse, and they might have fear, anxiety, or worry about physical injury with that. So they're in a heightened, aroused emotional state. And then we're asking them to communicate in a whole new language that they don't know. So I go, if you have trouble talking to your sister when you're just sitting on your mom's couch, you're going to have trouble talking to your horse when you're cantering them and they start bucking because that's hard. So understanding that that's a completely different language that you have to learn, and you have to learn to speak through your own body. It's complex, and modeling that and owning that and saying that up front, I think sometimes takes a little bit of the pressure off. And they go, oh, you get it. Oh, okay, it is hard. And it's okay for it to be hard for me because it is indeed a hard thing.
I used to say to my students that when you are sitting on the horse is seeing your thoughts in pictures. And what will your horse think when you sit there and think about what are we going to have for dinner tonight? Who of us is going to pick up the children? And all these things. I said, and you think that you can get the horse concentrated to work when your thoughts is like this.
Yeah, and I think that like combining that, communication is hard, but if you can't be in your own body, then how can you, because you're talking about communicating through your body. If you're not in your body, how the heck, what message are you sending? You don't even know because you're not there. And then taking this, like zooming out a little bit, right? I work with horses that need to go through a rehab program, and people are always in a hurry, like that instant gratification thing. And the best thing I've ever taught is when I can teach and get someone to understand that when we slow down, we speed up the process.
Mm.
When you slow down and you come into your body, like that communication is going to come so much faster. Same way as when we slow down and we really address the cause and not just try and treat all these symptoms really fast. It seems like you're taking 10 steps backwards because maybe you have to go to just walk only groundwork for a while. But I can tell you 6 weeks from now, you're going to be better off than if we were just throwing stuff at the wall, hoping that it would work. Right.
And when
So
you talk about using your own body, let's be honest about the majority of our clientele bases and the riders we work with. Kids, little kids and little women who are small and don't know how to use their body yet, or also their body's growing, like they're 12 and you don't see them for a month and they're 4 inches taller and you're like, hey, whoa, you have a whole new one. So everything has to be different. But then also riders who have had children, riders who have had C-sections, riders who have had injuries from horses or other things. Oftentimes, adult women have the most complex relationship with the way they view their own body. So now not only are we asking you to inhabit a body that maybe you have a complex relationship with, communicate with that body that you don't want to inhabit because you have a complex relationship with. And then when you're in the saddle, trust that body that you haven't really felt comfortable in to keep you safe. And now you enter into a whole nother emotional dynamic with the rider about how they feel about their own body and the way that they can use it and they can trust it. And oftentimes that in itself is many months of work.
To Heather's point here, I love that you just mentioned co-regulation also in the chat. And I think, there's a whole movement of people seeing horses as mirrors. And I don't necessarily love that word because they're much more than mirrors. But when we at least bring in a concept like that, which exists in the equine assisted services world, what people do understand then is there is a role in their behavior and how their behavior impacts the horse. So we can bring in a conversation of, is there a potentiality of mirroring going on or reflecting going on? If so, what are you seeing? And how is the horse being right now? How are you being? So we can have a context of a conversation through the energy or the conversation of mirroring and reflecting. We can also bring in the concept of oneness, that we're all connected, right? So we can start at some of these basic belief systems. If we're all connected, how is it that your energy is impacting the horses? And what I often like to tell people is just be authentic out of the gate. If you're having a bad day, claim it. Because the second I ever say to my horses, I'm having a hard day, please put up with me today, they're like, I'm in, like, we're fine, thank you, because there's congruency there, right? And so I think that's another piece, is to even just understand the basic foundations of relationship. Like, we often forget that we would never go grab our friend and like force them in our car and make them go to coffee with us. We would ask them. There would be a conversation. And so I think a lot of it is about asking permission and just understanding, if you love this being, which everyone for the most part loves their horse, whether they show it or not in the ways that we think is love, they love horses. So it's getting people back to that initial reason. Why do you love this horse? If there's love here, what would you do based on it being a relationship? And then this is ultimately why I teach animal communication, because we do have to learn to read horses, and we can read body language and it's huge, but can we read even past that? Because if we can, then we can ask a horse, do you want to be ridden? Do you want to be ridden today? Do you want to work with this client? Do you want to work today? And know that like they can have a voice and a choice from that place. And that's not easy. It took me a while to learn animal communication, and not everyone wants to do it, but at least I find just asking even kids, what do you think the horse is saying right now? Like, let them use their imagination. Let adults use their intuition, because that's when you actually get like a real connection and an understanding of a two-sided conversation, listening and speaking. And that's really, truly, like, to me, what it all comes down to. So that's my soapbox.
Yeah, but why isn't people doing that? Are they afraid of being rejected of the horse?
I think people are afraid of doing it for a lot of reasons. I think sometimes they don't actually want to know what their horse is going to say. My horses were bored yesterday and I felt horrible. Like, I mean, I was like, I know what my horses are saying sometimes, and it's hard to deliver it. They want me to get a gelding right now. They want me to do this. They want me, and I'm just like, girls, like, just hold on. We're doing what we can, right? And the challenge is sometimes when you hear something that your horse wants and you can't give it to them, it's really hard. Like and we can't always give something to our animals right away, and I think mine would love to live with 6 other horses. I'm not getting 6 other horses right now, so then what do I do to get them to feel like they're in a bigger herd, right? And so, and it's hard when your horse says, I don't want to be ridden. Because what if you want to ride your horse? Like, so the communication thing increases responsibility. And a lot of us don't always want to have increased responsibility, or to be held accountable. Like, it's so much easier for a lot of people to live in speciesism where humans are, we're at the top of the food chain and it's our way. And like, that's easier for people. And ultimately, sometimes people can be lazy. And it's like, it takes work to really step into this space, and it takes a lot of commitment. And I struggle with it because I can hear them and I know certain things, and I'm not 100% perfect. No, none of us are, but then we have to forgive ourselves and apologize and do the best we can.
I think another point here is that's stepping into a big unknown. And fear of the unknown is, I mean, at the root of our avoid that. We might die if we take that action. And so there's that fear of the unknown of what will my life look like if I open up to my horse in that way? Will they tell me I can't ride? Will I find that I am lacking in some way? For sure. But also, they have to be able to trust themselves to believe that what they're hearing is coming from their horse and that they have the right answer, right? Like, because we're taught from a young age that you don't listen to your intuition, right? Like it's shut down from a young age through school and through that external validation that we get. That thought that you had, it's a bad one. That outfit choice was a bad one. Those are basic things that we start with, where it's like we're learning that choice I made, self-trust, totally broke, right? And so you have to ask somebody to be willing to face themselves fully. I mean, like this this horse welfare game is well beyond that. Like, we have to step into our own welfare and get to know ourselves at a deeper level. And I mean, like, just what you were saying, Solange, about facing our body complexity and the fact that I have a feeling about my body, and if I'm not open and willing to face that feeling, if I ignore it, if I shut it down, that's the same thing as ignoring and shutting down what's going on in my horse. We want to talk about mirroring. It's not just my horse is doing this because I'm doing this. It's we are all beings that all have some echo of the same challenges and emotional, spiritual things going on in our lives. Like, we start this conversation on a level of abuse and care and welfare for the horse, but it all comes down to who are we as beings? Because on one level, right, speciesism is a lot easier because it's easier to look at it and not recognize that as a sentient being, we are on the same level. As a sentient being, we are all one and the same, and have to reconcile that, have to reconcile how we treat other sentient beings differently than we treat ourselves. And even that we don't treat ourselves as the sentient beings that we are at times. So, I mean, this is a very deep and complex situation. And all we can do is encourage people to trust themselves a little bit more each day, believe in themselves a little bit more each day, and show up for their horse just a little bit more each day, because it's always a process.
Well, and earlier we were talking about you have to listen, that the whole point is listening to your horse. And this comes back to like my little pet like theory in life, which is we as humans are taught from the time that we start speaking our vocal language that the word listen means obey. So you're very young, you're little, and people look at you all day long and go, listen to your mother, listen to your brother, listen to the teacher, listen to the coach, listen to that person, listen to your grandma, listen to your babysitter, listen to your uncle. And you're taught that the word listen means do what this person told me to do. Because we don't look at our 5-year-old and go, I'm talking to you. I'm going to impart information upon you that you need. that's going to help you inform your life and make future decisions, good or bad. So I need you to stop what you're doing and look at me with your eyes and put your listening ears on. And I'm going to show you with my hands and say with my mouth hole, this is why you can't touch this hot stove, because this is what will happen. So we have legions of adults who have deeply coded in our brains the idea that when someone says, you have to listen to me, it doesn't mean listen. It means you have to do what I said. And when you say, my horse isn't listening to me, it's implying that my horse is not obeying me. So the listen means obey problem can be tracked back to almost all communication errors, whether it's a child and a parent, whether it's a student and a teacher, whether it's a horse and a human, because we think that the word listen means obey. And those are two very different things. And we have humans who feel that when they listen to other people, it makes them submissive and less than. And when they're the teller and the talker, they're dominant and they're more superior. And this then travels into education, where you have to listen to the teacher. It's not listen to the teacher, you have to obey the teacher. So when we put a power dynamic on communication, that's where the abuse starts. Because now we've put the teller in the dominant position and we've put the listener in the submissive position. And the riders don't want to listen to their horses because ultimately they feel it makes them submissive to the horse and at the whim of the horse. And now they're going to get hurt, or the horse is going to whatever, and they're going to lose control of the situation. Many years ago, I read, I think in Gladwell, a description of a military game that the United States played before we got into the war in Afghanistan. And it was two groups, the red team and the blue team, and they were going to play this big war game. And the one team was led by a computer. They were going to see if like analytics and computers would work. And the other team was led by a field officer, an officer who had gotten to the state of power that they were in the military through being in the military. And as soon as the game started, the field commander looked at his team and said, "We are officially in command and out of control." And I look at my riders all the time and go, when you're around your horse, you're helping them make decisions. You're like, hey, don't go in the neighbor's yard. You can't. Don't stick your nose there. You're going to knock that down and scare yourself. That's the live fence. So let's not rub my leg into it, right? So you're giving them directions to keep them safe. And in a way, you're commanding both of you together. But you're not in control of that horse. And you're not in control of all the horses around you. And you're not in control of the environment. And the first thing a rider does when they feel unsafe or incapable of navigating their horse is they start relying on their environment. Well, I can do it, but can you not bring the hose out? Well, I can do it, but not if it's windy. Well, I don't want to bring them out when that horse is out because their horse is mean. Well, I don't want to ride when she's lunging because her horse was bad the last time. Or I can't do it because it's feed time. And when you rely on your environment to keep you safe, you'll get screwed every time. That's just like Murphy's Law, right? So understanding the difference between listening and obeying, and understanding the difference between being in command of yourself and being in control of another being, which you never really are big, complicated concepts that interact with horses and riders daily. And it's something that I see every single time I coach, are these two main threads that come in.
Yeah. What words, what words. It's fantastic. A lot to think of here. And time is going fast. Is there anything you want to say here before we shut down, or what you call it, close it?
I have one thing I'd like to add to our overall conversation that I think I made a little note of, but I wanted to emphasize that I see a lot of is because we've talked a lot about if the horse wants to be ridden or it's okay not to ride, and what I see a lot of is people aren't getting horses that are the right match for them. They want this horse because he's pretty, or this one, oh, because he's a gunner son, and he's this bloodline. I see a lot of people think they're doing a horse right by rescuing them or whatever, but then they don't have the skills or the knowledge to handle this horse that's been beaten and is all messed up. There's so many variables that I feel like that's something that's notable to say, is that when you get the right horse that's the right match for you, then we don't have as many of the welfare issues. You know, with sometimes these trainers, and I'm not saying I'm an advocate for some of the training methods, but sometimes when you're a trainer and that's your livelihood, and this owner's paying you $1,800 a month, and they want this horse and they want this horse shown and they want to ride the horse themselves. Sometimes these trainers are kind of put in a corner to do things to the horse to get the job done, if you will, right? To make the customer happy, because if that customer's not happy, they just pull the horse and go to the next guy, you know, or the next popular trainer of the month. And you know, if you don't have your barn full, you can't pay your bills. And we all know the overhead of having horses and horse facilities. So I want to put a huge emphasis on the right match. And sometimes all of the rescue horses are not the right match. So, and some of these horses that are high performance horses, they are bred to have a job. They need to be ridden. They need to do things, you know, like cutting horses and some of these, you know, these eventer horses, they are bred for that. They are not happy standing in a stall or sitting around. And so again, so many variables. Every horse is an individual, and we have to learn to match the right horse with the right person, and to speak to that. So if anybody's listening and they're like, I'm ready to go get this horse, start to ask yourself, are you getting this horse because he's the right and perfect horse for you, or because your trainer wants that horse in their barn, or you know, because it's the right color or the right bloodlines? Because if you can't ride that horse, the trainer's going to do things to it to get the job done. And that's where some of these welfare issues come into play. You know, taking the lower level dressage horse and trying to make him passage and piaffe, and when he physically can't do it because he's just conformationally not built for it, right? Like, we need to take that into consideration the next time we get a horse. And I see a lot of rescue horses not being rescued and cared for after they're rescued.
And so often everyone needs less horse than they bought.
Yes.
Because riders will go, I'm an older rider, I'm a beginner rider, I'm a fearful rider, I'm a nervous rider. I need a really well-trained horse. And I go, really well-trained horses are like the Formula One cars where you got to climb in the window and somebody hands you your steering wheel. Like, just because it's really, really highly educated does not make it nice, which we know in humans. Like, sometimes we know that the smarter you are, sometimes the meaner you are, you know? Like, the guy who has 4 PhDs in math maybe isn't like super happy fun time to hang out with because maybe he's a little structured and sharp. So really high level training in horses does not equate ease of riding. It's generally the opposite. But it's hard to look at a person who goes, I need a really highly trained horse, and go, you need an older, uncomplicated, slightly athletic, really lazy horse. You need a horse who's like, I could just stand here and eat chips with you all day. But with the industry and with the money, that becomes more difficult. If somebody has a $2,000 horse budget, they'll buy something that's, you know, more will than go. But if someone's like, well, I have $75,000 and I have to fly this horse over from Europe, it's hard to look at that owner and go, you need an old quarter horse mare that's just going to walk trot around for you and you'll be totally safe. You know, I fox hunted for a lot of years, and I always said it was very difficult to look at a woman in $800 riding gloves and tell her she needed like a $1,500 quarter horse to ride third flight, because she was convinced she needed a 17 3-hand warm blood. And it's that, again, it's that validation. I need this kind of horse. And oftentimes you need less. I love riding a little less horse. I'm always like, a little less, great.
You can always make them go. You can't always make them stop.
Amen.
Yeah, so thank you so much, ladies. It has been a pleasure, and I could talk all night long, but we have to end it at some place. So thank you so much for being here today, and yeah, I'm learning every time. So I hope we can do this again someday. I think it's very good, and discuss it and get it out there. And I hope a lot of people is looking at this when it comes out as a podcast. So thank you so much, and I hope I see you again soon.